Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, really excited about our conversation today. I have a guest that I've looked up to for a while. His name is John Clidy. He is a phenomenal leader within the KW infrastructure. And as you're going to learn today, he has multiple roles: KW franchise owner, realtor, has a big team, regional director, division leader, and the list goes on and on and on. But I think the roles he's most proud of have to be more on a personal level with your family. But John, well, number one, thanks for being on the show and sharing some of your time with me today. Anything you want to share with our community about who you are and what they should know about you before we get into our conversation?
Well, you know, I if I had to sit here and bore you all with all my roles, I got a bunch of roles. I think for all of us, the number one role is being a parent and a husband and a Christian and all that good stuff. And then from there, you know, I think if I had to sum it up in one, I would say I love being around. I love leading. I love being part of leadership. So whatever that means, you know, all my energy tends to be in that realm, whether it be leading mega agents, leading, you know, OPs, team leaders, thought leaders, you know, whatever you name, RDs, you know, that's what I tend to gravitate towards. And I think it goes back, I know you're going to talk about the book a little bit, but I think even being a police officer, you're kind of in leadership, right? You're in public leadership.
Yeah.
And you know, it was something that was always like that passion zone. So my role is leadership, I guess I would say.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to pull leadership back into the conversation a little bit later too, because you kind of roll into that into the end of the book, which we're going to talk about. But going back to all the different roles we all own is I really think it all comes back to leader. You mentioned being a dad, being a Christian, being in the community. All those are leadership roles if you are a leader too, right? You can't help but any of those roles be a leadership role if you choose leadership in life. So we share that passion on leadership. I'm excited to jump into a little bit more of your leadership journey here in a minute. So the one title we didn't say there is you've recently added author to your resume of titles of things you do. And today we're going to be talking about, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm holding up the book right now. It's called Leaving Six Figures, the all-in-one guide to find the courage to leave your job and get the success you deserve, which was a really fun read. And it's in the story format. You have a great story to tell. So real quickly, before we jump into some principles in the book, what triggered you to even write the book in the first place?
That's a good question. I would say that, number one, when I found out that since 1921, no one ever left the state police that didn't get terminated or died or illness or whatever, it intrigued me because I started to think about leaving, you know, and I'm like, am I crazy? Like, no one's really done this, especially 3 years shy of a pension for life. Am I crazy? You know, so I don't know. I was journaling. I was asking a lot of questions. And then every time, if you read the book, I had like things that made me really go, like, should I stay? Is this going to get me in trouble because I'm so into this new world that I found? Am I making enough money to leave? Is this cool for my family? Probably things that everyone deals with in their life, right? Because I wrote the book. I've had so many people come up to me. You know, I'm giving this to my husband. I'm giving this to my wife. Like, yeah. I want them to get out of the job. They're complaining every day. They get home about the job. And I'm like, that was me. You know, I was complaining every day, you know, to my wife or to my friends or to my parents, like, well, I'm back again, you know, and to a lot of people, it was their best job ever. They're like, oh my God, you got this golden ticket or you got this lottery ticket. I think one of the chapters I called a lottery ticket because everyone was saying it, but I didn't feel it, you know? So really the book is just that journey of hitting the steering wheel, driving to work 2 hours a day, one way, you know, in traffic, and 2 hours the other way back. It's just that journey and trying to figure out a way to leave that didn't put my family in harm's way, made me still feed my ego, my wants and needs. But again, back to leadership. I loved being a public servant. I loved helping people, but I didn't like helping everybody. Like, that's what I learned. Like, like I'm not a good person for new agents as much because I'm too blunt.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, this is not easy. Don't start getting here if you're not going to have good habits. Don't start being here if you're not going to have a schedule. Don't start coming here if you don't have any reserves. Like, I'm very blunt. And sometimes my team leader was like, we're not having you here,
Yeah.
And I want to be there because I want people to succeed, but I want to be honest and true to the journey, that it's not like HGTV.
Yeah.
And this is not HGTV. Leaving a career that especially for me, for 17 years, that I really worked hard to get. 6 months in academy. I had a bad knee, so I had issues in academy. I worked hard to get there, and not a lot of people. I think 10,000 applied. I think 100 and some of us made it. I was really proud of that, and to leave it and not retire with my class and get that retirement badge and all, like I didn't feel good about it. So I had to fight that journey too.
Yeah, well, I that's one of the things I actually really appreciated about the book, because I think a lot of people that come into your life now and meet the John Clidy, who is the John Clidy of today, probably thinks, oh, well, one day he just decided to make that move. Which I love how you show how you wrestled with it in your mind over a long period of time. You were 17 years and succeeding in that role. It wasn't that you mentioned being miserable at times, but it wasn't that you were failing in the role. You were doing phenomenal. You were getting accolades within the role. So it wasn't a decision of like, I'm failing here, let me do something else. But I love this idea of I'm succeeding, I'm doing well, and I can tell there's something more out there. But it took this period of time of succeeding in both camps before you said, like, now I need to make the decision, which I think that's going to ring true for a lot of the readers and listeners. It wasn't just this one day waking up and saying, I'm done. But I think a lot of people every day today, here we are on the 9th of August today, how many people drove to their job or took a subway or whatever it was, and in their mind were just like, oh my gosh, can I do this for another 10 or 15 years? I should be proud of what I'm doing, but can I continue to do this? So I loved your vulnerability in that part of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, listen, what I will tell you is what I've learned over, you get older, I think you feel like this, but like, I don't really care what people think. I'm just trying to be real, and I'm trying to be open and honest, and I'm living my dreams somewhat now, right? I'm where I want to live. I have the family that I want to have. I'm just blessed to have it. And the one thing that I've learned, for being a Christian and getting to church more, which we all should, is that, my journey now, is not going to be fulfilled if I don't bring some people along for this journey. So that's where I have been trying to be better. I've been trying to be more active in the community, in the church community, in the business community, helping minorities, helping everyone, not just minorities, helping anyone that needs help or needs direction. And you'll like this because you're an OP too, but I just instituted this thing where I gave a Calendly link to my top 10% in my market center. And anytime that they want to schedule a 30-minute segment with me, as long as it's available, for the most part, I'll take it. And the conversations have been, they've been better. I'm not going to tell them yet, but they've been better for me than probably for them, because I'm giving them everything I got. And a lot of them are on their initial journey or in the middle of the journey. And I've been there, and some of them are maybe beyond where I'm at. And that's cool too, but they want to hear from me. So, it's actually helping me. It's therapeutic for me to help them. So, that's the stuff that I'm enjoying. And I think the book journey allowed me to be able to help others, because I kind of put it in a format that I kind of can help no matter where it is, because it's all the same, right? Plan, prep, ask people you trust, act, all those things, those principles, and they might not be in the right order, but they're there, and everyone will have their own order as they kind of go through their journey.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's true leadership too. Any leader that thinks they're the one bringing all the value to the conversation, I think is missing a huge mark. I tell my listeners all the time, that's the whole purpose of this podcast for me, is even though I'm bringing content to a community, I'm growing every week in these conversations, which it's part of the path of growth, right? So let's jump into a couple stories in the book that just kind of stuck out to me, and some of them made me kind of chuckle because I could relate so much to some of the conversations you had. So if it's okay, the first thing I want to talk about is you shared a conversation you had with your wife at one point, who had started her own business, running, it sounded like a tanning salon, if I remember right. And she was putting all this time, energy into building this business, which a lot of people do. You look at how many entrepreneurs, get this idea, they have passion around it, they put all this time and energy into it. And I love how you saw the stress she was having around it. And ultimately you sat her down and asked her, what, if this all came together and you crushed it, what is the biggest income opportunity that you could possibly have from this? And it was an eye-opening moment for her. So kind of walk us through that story, because I think that exercise for a lot of people in a job, or even entrepreneurs that are caught in the wrong business, will be an eye-opening moment for them.
Yeah, it's funny. I just relived this story because I forgot. I don't know if I was church or I was with a couple at dinner. We kind of relived this because I think they had like a business too. Forgot what it was, but in my case, it was my wife was the kids were now in school, and she was a pharmaceutical sales rep, very successful. Making six figures herself, and then all of a sudden for 8-9 years she's being a caregiver, to the kids, homemaker, whatever you want to call it. And she was like, I need my own thing. So I was like, okay, I support you, honey, like any good husband would do, or vice versa. And, she's, starting this company, and we had a friend that had a successful one, and, it's cool. Like, we're in it, we're doing it. And she starts, you could see like, it's like taking a toll on her. She's running around with the kids, all that stuff. Like it's not clean. And then I'm pretty just to the point. And I'm like, well, where's the money? I'm like, after like a year, I'm like, well, where's the really good months and the really even sometimes like in our real estate business, right? You see some of these. I didn't see any of this. I just seen this, and this, I seen like that stuff. And I think I remember sitting there and I was like, all right, I do this for a living. This is what I do. So I sat her down and I said, listen, honey, I think I had to get her drinking or something too. I was like, let me ask you a question. Like, let's say you nail it. Like you have a great year. What could happen? What are you going to make here? Like after you pay your employees, you pay your products, all that stuff. And she said, she's sitting there in her mind, she's thinking the numbers, you can see it. And she's like, 50,000. I'm like, huh? I said, tell me this again. And I said, do me a favor, divide that by 12. And she's thinking. So I said, now you got that in your mind? I said, is it worth it? And now she's really thinking, and she's thinking, and she's like, I don't think so. I said, well, let's close it. I said, or sell it, whatever we can do. Now we actually couldn't sell it because it wasn't profitable, right? Who's buying that? Number two, it actually cost me money to actually close it with the IRS, with payroll. I mean, you name it. So the venture cost us money. And I didn't learn a lesson, but she did, that just because you're excited to do something don't mean you just do it without a plan, right? Now, I was too busy to really look at her plan. I let her do her own work because she needed it for her own soul. But, in partnership, which I am her partner, I probably could have did better to really play. Like if I had to go back and critique myself, I probably should have got more involved, because then I wouldn't have spent whatever I spent for that. But the learning lesson is that, we all can look at the numbers, and if she probably looked at it and seen that the best month gives her 50, or best year gives her 50,000, or gives her, 44,000 a month in income, is that worth it for her sanity, her life, and everything? Probably not. Now, if it was 200, now again, that's up to her financial thermostat, which she wanted to make. But everyone has, and we could do that with the MREA, right? We can work backwards. Yeah, we could do that with our market centers, right? You could see how many closings and what the company dollar is and what your expenses are. So, the business principles are there, no matter if it's Keller Williams real estate or if it's, Healthy Tans, which is what the name of the company was.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason the story resonated so much with me too, is because getting the opportunity to meet with either small entrepreneurs that have really passionately launched a business, or even this goes back to people stuck in a career. Like you look at a nurse or, an accountant or a banker, is same ideas. They feel almost trapped. Like, I've put time and energy into this. They've made this career. People know me for this. And then asking like that, using that nurse as an example, because I recently went through this, is like, all right, well, let's say that you show up as the best nurse, like you crush it. Like you were the best in the hospital. You were doing it better than anybody else. Like what's your income opportunity on that? Do you get way more for being the best and putting the energy into it than the nurse that's coasting along? And it's really not that much of a difference. And there really is max. I'm like, so your future self, can you build the future you want, maximizing being the best that you possibly can in that role? And it's almost like that aha moment of like, wait a sec, if I am going to work this hard in something and put my energy into something, shouldn't I have a little bit more control in my income opportunity to match that? Which is such an interesting conversation.
Well, if you remember in the book, I talk about being minus 40 hours, and, everyone's like, oh my God, you left a multi-million-dollar pension and you left 6 figures in gas and insurance and car and all that. Yes. And it was still a mathematical equation, because I knew in 3 years what my pension would be, right? I knew how much I would make. I knew what I would get. I knew the path to finish the 3 years, what I would make. So for the most part, I knew exactly what my thermostat was if I stayed. Now, what I didn't know is if I left and I got 40 hours, 50 hours back, I knew what I thought I was capable of doing. And I kind of knew it because I already seen what I could do with the hours I had.
Yep.
So then I had to start thinking, okay, so I'm doing that in like 25, 30 hours, because I was working like 70 hours a week, 75 hours a week with travel and all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, so if I got all that time back, and I'd be lying if I did think this, but I probably should have thought all the family time I got back. I didn't think of that, but I'm thinking now. I did get it back, but I didn't think like that. I was thinking business, unfortunately. And then I was like, oh, so if I can make $500,000 with the time I had, what could I make if I just focused on that? Right. And then that's when it started getting exciting. I'm like, oh, okay, so I can build this sucker and I can grow this thing. And I actually, when I do the keynote, I actually have a keynote for the book that's like an hour long. I share now my, and if you've been on the stage, you've seen Bo and Kimber's like org chart of their family. Yeah. I have one very similar. Maybe not like Bo and Kimber, but I have my own.
Yeah.
And it's for a good old boy like me in Williamstown, New Jersey, where it's we're very, very blue collar, very middle class, probably lower middle class. I'm proud of where it is and where I'm at. And when I share it with a lot of people, no matter it's California, Florida, wherever I've been, it's a lot of people like, wow. And then to the left is John and to the right's my wife. It's a 50-50. And then you see all the companies. Now, yes, I did it, but I couldn't have the family that I have without her. Yeah. So we're a partnership. And then I kind of show all the entities, and a lot of it's passive, right? Most of my businesses are in the Northeast and I'm in Boca Raton. So a lot of it's done by this, I'm on the phone a lot. I'm on Zooms a lot. I do fly out when I need to, but I handle my businesses with pad and paper and a lot of accountability and a lot of scheduling and a lot of timing and a lot of spreadsheets, which I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the game. That's the game.
Yeah. That's the beauty of the world we live in now, where we have the ability to lead beyond local, right? If you create that opportunity for yourself. And you mentioned that in the book, and you talked about at the beginning of this too, in your leadership journey, of this idea of saying you felt this draw to not just increase your footprint from an economic standpoint, but from an impact standpoint, right? Your ability to get to on a larger scale to connect with more people, which there's thousands of you. If you equated people, if you put up your org chart and showed it to this group, if you equated the amount of people that are being impacted through that org chart, it's significant, and it's in the thousands for what you've built, which is incredible. Which you think about business 50 years ago, it would have been a lot harder. Even 10, 15 years ago would have been a lot harder to have that big of an impact. So it's crazy the world we live in right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, it's almost like my kids, right? Like I'm watching my kids play sports, and it's more gratifying now than it was when I played. I think I get more into it when I watch them succeed than when I succeed. And I don't think it's any different for the people that I brought into the business world with me. When I see them do good, and I have a bunch that have made it nationally and regionally, and I've hired RDs now, and bunch of OPs, a bunch of team leaders have come through my organization, and some of them are still with me, and some of them are not, and a lot of them are thriving, and there's millionaires in there, and it just makes me smile. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes. So that's where it gets fun.
Agreed. You mentioned both of us have a passion around the book, 5 Levels of Leadership by John Maxwell. And that's what he says is the pinnacle of leadership, is that creating leadership behind you.
Oh, I could talk about that book. Anybody in my region, you ask them my favorite book, they'll tell you what it is. There's no,
yeah.
I'm a big fan of John. I see him probably a couple times a year, and we have a mutual good friend in Diana Kokoska. So I get updated by Diana a lot on his journey, but he's awesome. He's up there with Gary in my opinion. He's
and his relevancy at his age is still so spot on. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And it's funny, if you watch him lately, like all businesses, he never tries to steer you, we never get into politics. And he really, even though he's such a devout Christian, he really doesn't really talk about it a lot. And I happened to be at one of his first events. I think it was in Atlanta. It was Live to Lead, right before COVID, I think. And that was the first time he said on the stage that he really started doing like scripture and stuff in an event like that.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm getting old. I don't really care what you think anymore. And it's funny though, but as you get older, like you know what's right, and you don't care. You're gonna when you believe in it, you go for it, and you're going to be purposeful. So that's kind of, I'm not 70 like John, I'm in my 50s, but I feel like that now, man. I feel like I got a purpose, and I'm going to go for it. And I'm never going to do anything that's not being professional. I'm not going to be ever inconsiderate. I might not be as empathetic, which my wife reminds me of. I think it was the 17 years of being a trooper. I could definitely be more empathetic, but I haven't been around long enough to understand that, I got to put myself in other people's shoes, and I can't think about how I view it. I got to think, and that's leadership, right? Like, I could be like gross 20, whatever. And, maybe they had a situation that happened, or maybe there's something going on in their life and whatever. So even though I want the results, don't get me wrong, I want them, but I also do put myself in their shoes, where probably some points in my life I probably wouldn't, but as you grow your leadership level and lid, you kind of start saying, you know what, I want the results, but let me dig in more to see why I have the results I do have here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think one of the messages you really spend some time on hit home. In fact, I think you say it in a couple different chapters in the book that I really liked, is just encouraging people to never be complacent. That it was this idea of just being like, you can never be satisfied where you're at. And then that message is illustrated in your story over and over again, right? People saw you as a trooper and saw you as, oh, he's successful. People were wanting that job. And then you were saying there's more. You became a realtor. You didn't become just a realtor. You became the top producer in your offices, in several different offices, right? Mom and pop shop, another big brand, ultimately to KW, top producer. And then the thing that jumped out to me is you also went and got your master's degree. Which I thought was awesome, where most people would be like, why are you going back to school? You're like, you've made it. You're making great money. You're a leader in these organizations. And there was actually something on that page I thought was interesting. You said you got a master's in human resources, and you said 3 things behind it. I focused on human resources development for several reasons. First, I have a gift of getting along with people. Second, the gift also allows me to intuitively assess the individual's character and motives. And third, and this one really resonated with me, I felt a responsibility of leadership. And I wanted to touch on that for a minute, because it was interesting. Again, people around you could have said like, he's already made it, he's done it. But in your mind, you're like, no, I feel this responsibility of leadership, and there's something missing in my own development and skill set for me to be responsible with that calling of leadership. Walk us through that piece, because that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, you brought something that's crazy, that every time someone reads it, they get a different perspective, because I really haven't thought about that perspective since I wrote that book. Number one, complacency kills in my job and as a state trooper, right? When you go up to a car at 1 o'clock in the morning and you're all, I'm getting off work at 2 and you're all nonchalant, boom, like that, right? So, you got to follow all those things that you learned in training, right? You're walking up, you're focused on where their hands are, you're focused on the passengers, and business is no different, right? You're focused on where you are. Are you following the model if you're in a franchise? Are you following the model you created if you created it? All those things matter. And then for all of us, our tracker usually is success of others, our profit, our P&L or our bank, our bank statements and all that kind of tell us how we're doing, the effect we have on people. And, I would say that when I always thought about like me being complacent, I think it was that when I'm bored, I think I heard Ed Millett say this or something like that, is like, I don't know how to handle it. Like I know it sounds crazy, but to me, I'm uncomfortable being comfortable. Right. So when I'm comfortable, I'm like, what's going on? Like, is everything okay? Like, if I don't have a series of calls or so, I don't know if I have like this thing in me that I can't be complacent, because the minute I feel bored or I can eat lunch sometimes, I'm like, really, I got 30 minutes to eat lunch or an hour? This is crazy. Like, what's wrong? Am my business falling apart? I think like that. I know it sounds crazy, but I do. Like, I'm like,
yeah, I'm with you.
This is not cool. Like I can actually sit with my wife for like 20 minutes and have a cup of coffee, like, and do that. And I don't think everyone needs to be like that, but I will tell you that there is this thing inside of me that's burning, that I'm hungry for more, where I don't think, even in my early 40s, I wasn't hungry to read. I wasn't hungry to learn. I wasn't hungry to be better. And I think that probably hurt me in terms of like my speed to success, because now like I'm thirsty for podcasts. I'm looking for books to read. I understand that if I don't like a book, I don't read a book. I want to read what I want to read. And I also will mix and match. Like before, I'm like, I got to read business books. There's nothing else. I got to, now I'm like, I want to read something fun. I want to explore different genres of experiences as I read a book. So I think all that just says it's maturity and it is a leadership, because if I don't develop myself, how can I develop others, right? How am I going to make you better when I'm not even making myself better? But if I'm making myself better, now I can share it with you. I can give you feedback. I can give you things I've learned along the way. Now I'm being a better leader to you. I'm being a better leader to myself. And more importantly, if you're doing this right, you should be also inspiring your family. Like that's the one thing that I'm proud of. You ask my kids, they'll be like, oh man, my dad's another podcast. Or now I'm paying them. Now I paid them $20 to listen to a podcast on it was self-worth.
Yeah.
It was just recent. Ed had with the owner of It Cosmetics, the girl, I forgot her name. Yeah. But I asked all 4 of them. Two did it, 2 did not, and they sent me notes.
Yeah, cool.
Which was really cool. So yeah, I mean, I don't want my kids to be complacent. I don't want to be complacent, and I try not to have anybody in my world to be complacent.
Yeah, I think I love that. And I think it's interesting. I think complacency is, we think complacency shows up in extra time and boredom, but I think complacency is almost disguised nowadays for people because there's so much activity going on that I think a lot of people feel like they're busy all the time. They feel like their day was occupied with things. But if they looked at the average amount of time they spend on TikTok or social media or gossiping at work or things like that, that complacency to me is you're taking no effort to maximize your potential. to me, that is, you can feel busy and like you're doing things, but complacency is if you're not making an effort to be your best self. And so I love that in your story of, it was never this idea of complacency, of just being like, it's enough. I'm not feeling the best version of me, right? I'm not growing and progressing that way. And I think, to your point, is I think that's an integrity piece as a leader. Any leader that thinks they've made it and they get to turn around and lead is lost their integrity to be a leader, in my mind. If you're not continually progressing and working on your own self-development, you shouldn't be turning around and encouraging someone else and leading somebody else in their own personal journey. It's a lifelong journey from a leadership perspective, in my opinion.
Well, if you think about it, now that's level one, right? Because the complacency is first once you figure it out. The second part is, are you doing activities that actually make sense? Yeah. And that's what most realtors, I just had this conversation with one of my 10% interviews today, and I was like talking to him, and he really broke it down that he was spending all this time with agents that do no business. And I'm like, just imagine if you did that for you focused on you and you grew your business first. And I said, it's no different than being on a plane, right? When things go wrong, you put your oxygen on first, then you help everyone else. The problem with you, my friend, I told him, is that you're not helping yourself. You want to help so many other people, but you're the one that actually needs the help. So I said, go help yourself. And then once things get crazy because the money's coming in, it's helter-skelter, then you get help, and then you can help someone else.
Yeah,
that's the model, right? That's the MREA, right? You get crazy, you hire an admin. You get crazy, you might hire another admin. You get crazy, you hire a buyer's agent. Like that's same market center. You start off with no staff, then all of a sudden you hire ASC, then you hire a tech person, then you hire an ATL. Similar thing, but you don't do it until you're profitable, everything's great, and you're breaking at the seams because something's missing for customer service, and you're going helter skelter. Well, okay, now it's time. You smart, you act, you plan. Boom! All right, now you make it right. Yeah. Same concept.
Yeah, you earn the right to leverage. You earn the right to lead.
Excellent.
I love that.
Exactly.
So to wrap up our conversation, I wanted to bring up one more point that I thought was really good in the book. And you say this, it boils down to this: when the light switches on and you're driven towards a bigger purpose, you go for it. Complex business processes and regulations aside, it comes down to passion, purpose, and personal commitment. So I loved those 3 P's you pulled in here: passion, which you talked about a minute ago, purpose, and personal commitment. So I just want to get your take on those 3 things. I thought it was a good wrap up of the whole summary of the purpose of the book there. But any thoughts on those 3 things, or kind of your mindset around those as you wrote that paragraph?
Yeah, I think, purpose is a big deal. If I had to think about that, because, and I hate to mention this, but it's true. Like my mother-in-law, just a great example. She's, a little older, and right now, like her purpose is us, but it's not helping her, right? Like her have a life and, live her life, lost her husband a while ago and hasn't really recovered from it. And, I think, like I was telling my wife, we got to give her purpose again to have fun, but until she's prepared to do it and committed to it, it's not going to be that easy. So our goal now is to really get her in a position, whether it be in a new community with a better adult program and all that for those folks. But again, when people don't have purpose, man, you see what happens in life, right? The things that are going on with mental health and some of the challenges. So purpose is important. It's important in work. It's important in life, in marriages. And I do think it's part of everything. And, you can leave 6 figures if you have a purpose to leave it. If it's just for money, I don't know if that's everything. But if you say, you know what, I'm leaving because I want to have a better life for my family. I want my kids to be in a better school than I was, or I don't want my wife to work anymore. All these things I've heard on my journey, of the book. Then you're going to be like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I want my wife. I don't want my wife to work I don't want her to be that nurse again or whatever. I've heard so many.
Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, I got a reason to leave this job and to make more money. Cause like you said, like if I'm going to be a school teacher, we need school teachers. My kids have school teachers. Yeah. but they know, some of them know that they're going to make 60,000 a year no matter what.
Yep.
And they have to decide, is that enough to live the life I want to lead? I don't know. They know. Yep. If it's not, then do you want to do a side hustle? Is that going to take more time from you and your family? Is that what you want to do? Do you want to have a supplement or do you want to just be in a career or a position that you could make what you want to make in a place where you want to make it, and you can have the life you want to live? But without that purpose, I think it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I love that you separated those into two things. I think oftentimes people think that passion and purpose are synonymous, and they are completely two different things, right? So like, for example, I'm incredibly passionate about martial arts. I love to train. It is so fun. It really is in alignment with my purpose. Like, yes, I get to exercise self-discipline and certain things like that are life lessons that play into my purpose, but I could do that through other passions, through other hobbies. I'm passionate about it, but it's not my purpose. It's I think, again, I loved how you separated those as two different things. If you can't get clarity on what your life purpose is, it's really hard to make the decisions, which plays into that third piece you pulled in, that personal commitment of like, if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, it's really hard to make the personal commitments you need to make to get there. Right. I just thought that whole paragraph was really well put together.
And if you think about it, like a lot of people, sometimes, you might not be passionate about your job right now, but you better be, because you got to pay your bills. Right. And at the end of the day, you got to be smart. And that's where planning and all the other things comes in. And your job is to change it so that way you're passionate about what you're purposeful about. And it all is in alignment. Sometimes it's not at the same time. Sometimes it's not at all. Again, like you said, I love pickleball. Right.
Yeah.
Again, it's not like it's my purpose and my sole being of being pickleball. I enjoy to do it. It makes me feel good when I do it. But, I know people now that they're actually passionate and purpose. They have a purpose, and that are starting like lines of rackets, and they're giving it to charity. And like, that's an alignment to all that. So they decided, like, I'm going all in here. This is it for me. So it all, it's synonymous to each other. But I do like the fact that, everyone's journey is different. And that's part of the book too, is that my journey is not yours. Some people, you don't leave. You love what you're doing. Stay. Do it. Do both, and if you're hitting the steering wheel like I was, then maybe you decide that, I don't want to stay in this world and I'm going to do something different. And this book will give you a kind of plan to maybe start getting the pieces together so you can leave when you're prepared.
I love that. And I think it's such a unique message, because I think so many people have decided like, hey, burn the bridges. You got to just quit your job tomorrow and go all in. And if you think about it, even today, where both you and I, if people looked at our resume of success, there's things that have happened along the way that would justify us being one thing. But look at us both today. We both are still dual career people because we have multiple roles, right? So this is something you don't necessarily outgrow, of just being like, oh, I'm going to do a dual career for a while until I can do this full time. Like, depending on how big your vision or purpose in life, you may be dual career for a while. You just might be stacking careers and moving through them along the way to build that bigger purpose, that bigger life that you're trying to create. So I thought that was a really cool. I never had made that connection before of like, I'm actually still a dual career person, right? Just in a different way than we normally think about it. It was brilliant.
It's called controlled dual career. You do it when you want to do it.
Yeah, good point. Well, man, I love the book. I think I'm so excited to give it away for anybody listening to this podcast. First 10 people that send me their ahas on the book or on this podcast, I'd love to give you a copy of the book as a gift from me. But just really excited about sharing this conversation out. Any last thoughts from you, John, about what you want to share with the community and or how they can follow you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on social media, LinkedIn, all that, Leaving Six Figures, or John Clidy. They can always reach out to me. But, the one thing I write when I sign my books is I always write a caption, choose happiness. And, I've learned watching people over the years, whether it be in the police world or in our world, like, at the end of the day, life's too short. And to wake up miserable or not happy is not a way to live life. So, when you're not happy, don't just keep staying in the unhappiness, right? I don't care if it's your marriage, your job, whatever. Choose happiness and start figuring out a plan to get to happiness. And every day you can have a win on that, right? Every day you can do a little bit more to get towards that. But life's too short to live one more hour, one more week, or one more year not being happy. So I just always say choose happiness.
And I love that message. And I think it's so relevant for busy people. Several years ago, I was sitting on a beach and not feeling very happy. And I got my phone out and I wrote a note in my iNotes, what really makes me happy. And I made a list of those things that are really the core piece of my happiness. And it's the most read note in my iPhone, because anytime I just need that little connection of like, okay, let me reconnect with what really happiness is for me, I just pull that back. And years later, that list is exactly the same of the things that make me happy. But it's just a great little reminder for me to like reconnect with, there's so many choices. There's so many things that could demand my time. But if I can root back to like what really makes me happy, I think that's a brilliant message to end on. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, Enchilada Nation, thank you guys for leaning into the conversation. We'll continue to bring incredible guests like John to the table to have these conversations. And don't forget, go live life on your terms.